Okay. So everybody, welcome to the first of the two afternoon panels. My name's Simon Garnett. I'm an editor at Eurozine. Welcome to our online viewers to the 32nd European Meeting of Cultural Journals. The title of the panel today is Political Shifts, Media Freedoms and Cultural Journals. So we've been talking in the mornings about some very, very practical, important issues. The aim of the panels in the afternoon is to broaden it out a bit and talk about some more broader kind of contextual issues. I'm delighted to be joined on this panel. And starting on my far left, here's Mustafa Unlu. Mustafa is the chairman of the board of P24 independent journalism platform in Turkey. He's a documentary filmmaker and the founding member of the Association of Documentary Filmmakers in Turkey and chairman of its board from 2015 to 2019. And he's a lecturer for documentary cinema at Istanbul Orkan University. Next to Mustafa is Tomasz Huczko. Tomasz is a writer, translator, and until relatively recently, a TV journalist. You're going to be telling us a bit about that. He's also the founder and editor-in-chief of the Slovak journal and publisher Kapital, which was founded in 2017. And then finally on my left is Anne-Lorraine Bujon. You are the editor of the French journal Esprit. You are an Americanist with a long career in non-profit organizations and human rights NGOs. And you've been editor at Esprit since 2016, if I'm right in saying. So welcome to the panel. The purpose of this panel is to talk about the position of cultural journals in contexts where states exert political pressure on the media, or where emergent constellations of media ownership and political power give cause for concern. Media concentration and political power are, there's a complex relationship between the two, so that often we have a high media concentration exerting excessive power at a weak government, and I'm thinking here, the Murdoch press, for example, in the English language realm. But it's also the case that homogeneous media landscapes and highly concentrated media landscapes tend to be a corollary of repressive regimes. So it's an obvious point that anti-plural nationalist forces are interested in maximum media concentration. We know this. This isn't to rule out other types of concentration. So we may have media concentration that is ostensibly an apolitical one, commercialized media. That brings with it attendant risks. However, it's true to say that that shifts towards the far right that we're seeing across Europe and of course further afield are likely to find less resistance where media diversity is in the process of being undermined, and that the power of established autocracies depends on a subordinate media. The speakers on this panel come from countries, I would suggest, at stages on a continuum from pluralism to autocracy. So on one hand, we have France, where this year the Rassemblement National won an unprecedented victory in the European elections, sparking a parliamentary election, which in turn delivered an impasse, which was resolved without the involvement of the Nouveau Front Populaire. A curious development, which we may have time to go into. At the same time, there is the rise of an ultra-conservative media across various platforms, TV, radio, and print journalism, best summed up by the term the Bolloré media. In Slovakia, the next stage on this continuum, we are seeing a rapid decline of media plurality since the parliamentary elections in October 2023, when Robert Fico's Smer joined a coalition with the far-right Slovak National Party. This process of the erosion of media freedoms has accelerated since the failed assassination attempt on Fico in May. The kind of clampdown on cultural institutions is also directly a direct consequence of the appointment of the far-right Simoš Kovica of the National Party as Minister of Culture. And Thomas, you're hopefully going to be talking a little bit about these developments too. And finally, in Turkey, where we're seeing since 2016 the consolidation of power after the putsch attempt and a thorough subordination of media in the hands of regime-loyal owners. And as you mentioned yesterday, up to 90%. You're talking about a partisan media. So media freedoms in Turkey are now next to non-existent. And thousands of journalists have been forced to leave the profession or move onto informal digital platforms. So that was my brief summary. However, I would like to start off by asking you to speak more about your perspectives on these developments. And I would like to start with you, Anne-Lorraine, sort of representing, if you like, the first stage on this continuum.
Thank you very much, Simon, and thank you to Eurozine, naturally, for inviting Esprit to this conference. We're always very pleased to be here. So a word about the French context in complement to what you say, and I'm going to try to go from more general remarks to more specific. Generally speaking, France is, as other countries in Europe or across the world, experiencing these different forms of democratization, I would say, and a rising tide of national populism or far-right leaders. And you mentioned Marine Le Pen. I think it might be useful to say, especially since she took over from her father as the leader of the National Rally. And I'm sorry if all of you know this already, but she's been very busy demonizing the National Rally with obvious success and doing better in each election, really. And this trend has accelerated in these past few years, and the elections we had last spring are a very good example of this. In this general political context, I think the issue of independence and pluralism of the media has become a cause for concern and is being discussed publicly quite regularly in France, which we could see as an improvement, because I'm not sure it was an issue or was being discussed 10 or 20 years ago. Now that really is the case. People are worried about different kinds of threats. Media concentration is one, and I'll come to that in a second. But there is also, obviously, foreign interference in the elections, disinformation, mounting levels of distrust of journalists. All these trends are worldwide, and it's happening in France as well. And maybe a more specifically French issue about the public funding of what we would call public service media, radio and TV, which has also become a matter of discussion with a number of parties, and the National Rally is one of them, wanting to cut public funding of national radio and TV. It remains to be seen whether they would really do that if they came into power, because it would be a great tool for them. So, but we would see what would happen. In terms of media concentration, there's been a high level of concentration and more, I think, integrated conglomerates of media, bringing together publishing houses, magazines, TV, radio, advertising companies. And one of these precisely is more worrying, and that's Bolloré, the Bolloré empire you mentioned. Why is this media mogul a particular cause for concern? A number of reasons. Well, his group is huge now, so that's one thing. He started building it in the 2000 or so, and has been building it gradually, adding to it bit by bit. And the comparison with Murdoch is used very often. He's also a figure quite unlike Murdoch in the fact that in the way that he prefers to act behind the scenes, I would say. He doesn't appear in public a lot. He rarely ever speaks in public. And he always insists that he's in the media industry for business reasons, which I think is not corroborated by the fact that the media he has bought up are not doing that well, actually, economically, but he keeps buying more. But he will always insist that he's in it for the business and not for the politics. Although it looks like an attempt to take over the public sphere and really use his media as advanced weapons for the culture wars. He's been using the strategy people often say of the cuckoo's nest. In the sense that rather than setting up new media outlets, he has been buying very well established and rather mainstream media outlets, like Paris Match, the Society magazine, and Europe 1, which was quite a mainstream radio channel. And the latest of these is Le Journal du Dimanche, that appeared every Sunday. And again, it was a rather mainstream paper and known to be maybe an organ close to government, sort of legitimists, you could say. And so he buys them and changes the leadership that provokes huge strikes. Is everybody aware of this? Am I just stating the obvious or no? Okay, good. Because everybody talks about it in France. But he has provoked huge strikes. And the latest one was Le Journal du Dimanche, when he bought that weekly paper, fairly mainstream. He decided that the editor would be a man called Geoffroy Lejeune, who used to be at the head of the far-right weekly called Valeurs Actuelles. And the whole editorial, the whole team of journalists went on strike, and they remained on strike for 6 weeks, but they lost eventually, and most of them left. But so a year after this takeover of Le Journal du Dimanche, the paper looks the same. It has the same logo, it's the same brand. I mean, if anyone did not pay attention, they would be reading this, the editorial line has changed drastically. So they're now reading something that is far-right propaganda, but it looks really the way it used to look a year ago if you were not paying attention. Bolloré and his media were really behind Éric Zemmour's campaign in 2022. Éric Zemmour, if you know who he is, so he used to be a TV commentator on the Bolloré media, and he's really sort of proto-fascist. He is very much to the right of Marine Le Pen, and he contributed to making her look really amenable and respectable because he is further on the right to her. So his campaign was a failure, but I think it has accelerated the trend towards the far right and towards the union of what you could call the traditional right and the far right. And I think what the Bolloré media are doing is they're really contributing to brutalizing the public sphere. There's total confusion between opinion and information, especially on his 24-hour news channel, C News. And their overall message is that France is on the brink of civil war. Therefore, we might need an authoritarian government to put things back in order, right? And so Bolloré and his successes in terms of political influence, because again, I'm not sure they're business successes, have inspired other media moguls, like another ultra-conservative Catholic billionaire called Pierre-Édouard Stérin. And he is trying to buy up different things now, like the weekly Marianne, which is interesting because Marianne is very Republican in the sense secular, and he is openly Catholic and trying to advocate for that kind of social conservatism. So maybe I can stop here on the context, just with a small note about the elections last year, because I think it shows how all this came to play in the French context. So you may know that the far right fared very well in the European elections, which was anticipated. But maybe Macron and the presidential bloc, centrist bloc, did not anticipate that they would be that successful. And Macron, after these results, decided to call a snap election. He dissolved the National Assembly and called a snap election. So we had like a very rushed campaign for the legislative elections, and the Bolloré media were everywhere during that campaign, everywhere, and with the same journalists speaking on radio, writing in his papers, buying up advertising. So you would see how it all came into play, and favoring